Thank you so much for being here. Speaking of thank yous, this is the one Nerd Nite which exists across the world that is sponsored by a library, which is why you had no cover when you came in tonight, and how cool that we get to do that. So thanks, AADL. Another reason we get to do that is because we have a wonderful partner in Live who does things like, yeah, sure, we'll open a few hours early for you, and you'll bring some nerds in here, and it's win-win. So thank you, Live. And then we wouldn't be doing it if y'all didn't show up. And I tell you, I don't know, folks. I think this is a pretty full house. I heard rumors that there's already not chairs, and I'm seeing folks. And I saw some new faces as you're coming in. So thank you for coming and testing it out. It's a grand old time, and I'm glad you're here. And we wouldn't be here if we didn't have wonderful speakers. So tonight we have Kim Williams-Guillén talking about bats of Wayne County. We have Chu and Jong talking about how loneliness hurts, and let's talk about it. And Jim Ottaviani telling us how asteroids probably won't ruin your day. But first, it's time for your Nerd Nite Minute. So let's say, as you were coming into Nerd Nite tonight, you saw this guy, all his arms full, and he was trying to open the door with his hip. What would you do? You would go and open the door with him. You'd see someone in need, and you would help them. But the question is it is in our nature to give a hand, but when does that start? And U of M professor in psychology, Dr. Felix Warneken, proposed and did studies that shows this can start as early as a year and a half. And so I am cribbing some things from a TEDx talk that he did in 2013. But it's really cool, and so I wanted to share with you. So the first experiment he did is he was in a room with a kid, and he drops a clothespin and kind of pretends like he can't pick it up. And this is what happened.
Oh.
Gets up and hands it. A year and a half, going, oh, shows he needs help. So then there was the question of, all right, well, that was just, sometimes kids, you drop things, they pick things up. It's like the game where they drop things and you pick them up. So it took it to the next level. In this video, which I think, he's trying to open his cabinet. Got these I can't do it.
Oh.
And then comes my favorite part. Watch the kid's face. That's what you wanted, right? Saw the need and helped them. There was no asking for help. There was no, here's a reward. They just did it. So then he took it up one more level, which is, will a kid help you if they have to stop having a really good time? So in this one, woman is writing a letter. And she's dropped her pen, but look at this kid in the ball pit. He's having so much fun, but I see what that person needs. Here you go. All right. Operation done, and back to fun. And I don't know, and maybe it's just because I have a little one at home, but seeing this was kind of giving me that hope I needed in this dark, terrible time. So the moral of the story is that 2-year-olds are better helpers than you might expect, even when there's a really rad ball pit. And that is your Nerd Nite Minute. I'd love for you to help me welcome Kim. Kim is a scientist, conservationist, and regenerative farmer. She has done all sorts of cool things, including, sorry, I'm just trying to see this. and developing an interest in bats, including studying the conservation and ecosystem services provided by bats in shade coffee plantations in Mexico. But then came back and works on bats in Southeast Michigan, and that is what Kim is going to talk to us about tonight. So please join me in welcoming Kim.
All right, thank you so much. And when I made this talk, I thought I was going to have, am I doing this wrong? I thought I was going to have 20 minutes and then 10 minutes for questions, and it's just the 20 minutes. So just hold on to your butts here as we fly through these slides about bats. Bats, they're amazing. They're awesome. There's 1,500 or more species of bats in the world. There are all kinds of bats. There are fruit-eating bats. There are insect-eating bats. There are bats that are vertebrate predators. There are bats that are like hummingbirds that drink flower nectar. That's that guy with the long nose. Yes, there are vampire bats. There are 3 species of vampire bats in the world, and because of that, we talk about bats in October during Halloween. And these are all bats that I personally have met in just one farm in Mexico. And bats show a latitudinal gradient in their biodiversity, which means that there are 9 species of bats in all of Michigan. But they're still really, really important and extremely awesome. And I'm not going to belabor the point too much, but bats are weird. They fly with their hands. They see with their ears. They are extremely important to us, especially when we're in temperate ecosystems where all bats are insect eaters, in insect control and limiting insect pests. And bats are in trouble. So there's many of the usual suspects like habitat destruction and deforestation. Here we see, I don't know if this has a pointer, but this is a wetland, forested wetland that's being destroyed. Bats love wetlands in particular. There are other things some of you may have heard about, global decline in insects. That's bad for bats. They eat insects. Bats, this is particularly related to pesticide use and habitat destruction for agriculture. There are other things that are affecting bats, climate change, a number of factors. Novel pathogens is one that's impacting bats here. I suspect that many of you have heard of white nose syndrome. I see lots of heads nodding. You came to a bar to hear a PowerPoint, so I'm making educated guesses here. This is a fungal pathogen that was introduced to the United States from Europe in 2006 and has started to decimate bat populations here. It infects hibernating bats. It causes them to rouse out of hibernation multiple times. When the conditions are poor, they burn through their fat stores. That little picture on the bottom is a bunch of dead bats on the ground. And it's had devastating impacts on bats, particularly in the Midwest and Northeast, where we have a lot of bats that hibernate over winter in caves, which is the bats that are affected. This is just one bat cave in Connecticut, but we see this pattern repeat over and over again across the United States. And we don't know exactly how many bats have been lost to white nose syndrome. In 2012, there was a reasonable estimate of about 7 million bats, but we're over 10 years later, so there's the bats that have died, the bats that have not been born because of white nose syndrome. And if it seems like this is just an abstract problem for somebody else, I would like you to know that you're wrong. This is a study that came out actually just last year. An economist sat down and looked at the use of pesticides in places with and without white nose syndrome. And he found pesticide use increased 31%. Crop value actually decreased 29%. And the really interesting thing is that he looked then at the effects on human health. There was an 8% increase in infant mortality in places where bats were lost because insecticide use had gone up. And when he looked at the actual economic value of the losses to crops, the increased expenditures for farmers, and the actual damages because of the infant loss, he values that as almost $40 billion. And if we go wildly extrapolating and say 40 million bats have been lost, I mean, that means each bat is worth $1,000 to us. Not just to farmers, but to people who live off of farms. So losing bats is not just a problem for environmentalists, it's a problem for everybody. And they're so important because of what they do, which is the echolocation. So they're able to use ultrasonic vocalizations that they produce out of their mouths. It goes out, reflects off Mr. Moth here in the corner, bounces back, and they can use that to find and capture prey. That on the right is just kind of like an example of if you record a bat using the right equipment and look at it in special software, an example of what those vocalizations look like. And so this is incredible because then we can start to study bats without having to specifically annoy them with mist nets. And sometimes people say, well, why ultrasonic though? And it's because insects are small. It just has to do with wavelengths. You know, if the wavelength is too long, then it goes around the moth or the insect. Ultrasonic, generally, we're talking about 20 kilohertz and above frequencies for sounds. Most humans can hear up to about 18, maybe up to 20 if you're very young. And so we get above that, then you can actually start getting smaller insects. And this is important to us as to me, or to biologists who are studying bats and trying to make use of ultrasound as a study method, because different bats are going to be echolocating in different ways. And so we can now start to use that to look at their calls. And we don't have to belabor this point too much, but so, you know, if you eat a small insect, you need to call higher. And this is just an example of different structures of bat calls at different frequencies. And the other thing is that bats have to deal with signal discrimination. How do you find a little teeny tiny thing that's this big? And they've shown in laboratory testing, bats can discriminate between targets that are that are like a half a millimeter apart. So this is a tremendously sensitive system. The downside is that if your vocalization bounces off of a gnat, it also bounces off of leaves and trees and obstacles. So ultrasonic noise attenuates very quickly, which presents problems for both bats and the biologists that love them. But it does mean that we can say, if we look at different aspects of bat ultrasonic calls, these are our Michigan bats, of which there are 9. There is one bat that it has its range coming up to Toledo and Windsor, and it's never been documented in Michigan. And I figure, well, there's a new bridge, so maybe we'll see it, right? But, you know, it's like we can start to discriminate between bats, and bats that have that forage in cluttered space have different calls than bats that are kind of on the edges of forest, and they're different than bats that are in bigger areas. And I could integrate other aspects of echolocation morphology into this graph, but it wouldn't look as good, so we're just going to look at these ones. So echolocation. So we can use what's called acoustic monitoring, ultrasonic microphones to record those bat calls and then look at them and listen to them. And it's an incredible tool because, like I mentioned, we can learn what bats are in an area without having to get a mist net or a permit or rabies shots or any number of things that come into play. And it lets us also, the costs and sophistication of the equipment that is available since when I started studying bats in 2006 is astonishing. I mean, you can go out and you can order online, you know, the base model, if this thing is less than $200, you can plug it into your phone, get the appropriate app, and walk around and actually start identifying putatively bats in real time. So it makes it so that citizen science can actually generate some truly meaningful data in a short period of time. And when we pair this with advances in machine learning, for automated call recognition, we actually can manage large data sets and get a lot of information very quickly. And importantly for this talk, we can learn about what bats live in a place without trespassing, because we can take something like this very inexpensive, what's called an audio mouth, a little unit, put it up a pole, and if I want to know about bats in a wetland that has been slated for development, and that person doesn't want me to go in there and find out if endangered bats are there, it's okay, because look, I'm just in the right of way. I'm not trespassing. And so I can go to the right of way next to a property that is very well fenced in, like Fort Knox, point my microphone the right direction, and learn things. And so this is just a view in the other direction. That's that very big fence. Here's this very inoffensive, knee-level grass. There is a disadvantage to this, which is that sometimes the day after you put your bat detector up, somebody comes and mows the grass and doesn't notice the pole. And so, you know, you lose some bat detectors. They're vulnerable to theft. Your husband might take a picture of you while you futilely looked for memory cards in deep grass. But it was $200, so who cares, right? But I mean, this is not the only disadvantage to acoustic monitoring, of course. On the other hand, it's very easy to end up with an absolutely untenable amount of data very quickly. And I have literal terabytes of data in my house that I cry myself to sleep thinking about. But there are other things. One thing is that sometimes people think, hey, you know, you point your thing and then you know who's there, and it's not that simple. A bat because the function of a bat call is really different. Who here has ever used Merlin? That little call ID thing. It's like Shazam, well, not Shazam, I don't think that exists anymore, but you know, you record a bird and it tells you the bird, and it's like, that's awesome, because birds, when they call, they're looking for a mate. They're defending territory. There's a good reason why their calls tend to be species specific. Bats are trying to find food. And if two different species of bats are looking for the same food in the same place, they tend to look in the same way. So a bat might change its call a lot based on where it's hunting. So different environments matter. The function is very different. It's probabilistic. And of course, the problem is that most calls also are crappy. If your microphone functions very well within 10 feet of if you can record a bat well within 10 feet of your microphone, then 20 feet's kind of iffy and 30 feet's kind of, but volume-wise, there's a lot more at 30 feet. And so this is a demonstration of what I'm trying to tell you. And who's this? That's Margot Robbie, famous actress. Who could not recognize Margot Robbie, right? The thing is, there are many actresses who look similar to Margot Robbie. This is some other actress. Her name is Samara Weaving, according to my note. Pretty similar looking, but hey, you know, her forehead's different and her chin's a little different. We can tell her apart from Margot Robbie real good. And this is a different actress. Her name is Emma Mackey. And people say, well, her face structure looks just like Margot Robbie. And it kind of does. I mean, she's got brown hair and brown eyes, so we can tell her apart. Sometimes she has blonde hair, but we can still tell her apart. But sometimes you get this. That's Jamie Presley. That's like the same person, except her upper lip is different. And then if Jamie Presley is 2 radius away from my microphone and we're paparazzi, imagine this. Now which one's Jamie Presley, right? So this is my life, basically. And just to continue this point, if I were a paparazzi for bats, for every good picture of Margot Robbie I get, just by dint of the volume around the microphone, I get 7 crappy pictures of Margot Robbie, and I get 19 pictures where this may be a human being. And also, all of my calls have katydid and orthopteran nocturnal calls at the same frequency, interrupting even the good ones, and it's a very sad time sometimes. But I did not come here to make you look at pixelated ladies. I know you can do this in the privacy of your own home. I brought you here to look at wetlands. Woo! So this is Wayne County. It's right next to Washtenaw County. And all of these little green turquoise bits that you see are some fragments of remaining wetland in Wayne County. And you can see there is not very much. I'm going to talk about 3 places. It's the 3 big pins. And this is a kind of, doesn't look that great map of wetland destruction. Red is bad. And so southeast Michigan, you can see, has a lot of red. Depending on the estimate, we're looking at 90 to up to 97% of wetland loss in Wayne County compared to what was here when Western settlement began. And this has real-world consequences for us. This is 2001, but I saw this again in July this year, inconveniently, when I was trying to fly home from a family reunion. This is I-94. You can see the sign that helpfully says, emergency, essential travel only, which, you know, yeah. And this is directly related to that. The wetlands are sponges. Detroit has a massive flooding problem. And the Wayne County, County Conservation District has been working very hard to try and keep the remaining wetlands that we do have intact. So this is Connie Boris. She is the director of the Wayne County Conservation District. And she reached out to me. I don't remember exactly how she found us a couple years ago. Oh, shoot, I need to hurry up. Anyway, so she said, hey, they're going to cut down a forest at the garbage dump. Somebody do something. Find some endangered bats. That's the forest there. If you ever drive to IKEA, you pass this garbage dump. Why is it called Woodland Meadows? It used to have a golf course that's there at the southern end. This is the golf course now on fire. And I'm going to spoiler alert, we were not successful. That pile of wood chips is what the forest looks like now. So we're just getting started on our work. This would have been a beautiful wet music wetland forest. Connie said, can you find endangered bats? And I said, I don't know, I can try. So we went to a bunch of places and we put out a bunch of bat detectors. And I was actually really surprised because we found at least 7 bat species. We found bats that are super duper common and live everywhere. We found bats that are a little more typical of forests, that roost in leaves and tree hollows. We found bats that are pending listing on the endangered species list, but that is still pending because you know who got elected. We found evidence of endangered bats too. This is the little brown bat, used to be one of the most common bats in Michigan, is now IUCN endangered and is being considered or was being considered for listing on the ESA. We did not find anything that is currently listed on the endangered species list. One would have been really unlikely. The other problem, though, is that the little brown bat and the Indiana bat, which is definitely endangered, really hard to tell apart from just acoustic monitoring. They're virtually identical. It's one of these, honestly. And you know, sometimes the girl isn't smiling, so you really, you know, when it says luso, it could be lucifugus or sodalis. But the point is that we actually found more than I expected. And we lost and it sucks. But Connie said, well, let's keep going. Now, everything I'm going to tell you right now is not vetted and the data analysis is improper, so don't tell anybody. We went 3.5 miles down the road to the east. This is a beautiful forest. I got so excited when I saw it. I was like, they want to build a Stellantis parts plant here. The other half belongs to the state of Michigan and is a question mark. I got excited. I thought there's going to be a butt ton of bats, and there weren't. And I got confused, and I said, what the heck's going on? Just compared to the year before, I started thinking, did that deforestation have more of an effect than I thought? So we went back to the dump, and we looked at some of the same sites, and things are different. It's been a cold, dry summer until apparently last week, and there are other interannual variation, but so far we actually are finding fewer bats and way fewer of the more sensitive bats, so we might have an argument for actual damages done. And we've continued. There's a third place that is imperiled. It is called Sibley Prairie. It is in Brownstown Township, Romulus. This is the Detroit Airport, DTW. I-75 is there. This little beautiful patch of green right here is my farm. So I care about this a lot. I want that wetland to stick around. It is some of the last examples of what's called lake plain prairie. This is probably the most endangered ecosystem in southeast Michigan. And this property was coming up for auction in August. And a huge 440 acres. There is a little bit of a reserve down here called West Prairie that is managed by the Southeast Michigan Land Conservancy. So they let us go in there, and we did a bunch of some sneaky batty not trespassing also around there. And I was surprised to find, actually we had a really different picture of bats. The one guy, big brown bat, if you have bats in your house, it's a big brown bat. And just that the bats there were actually really a unique assemblage compared to every place else that I've looked in Wayne County, including places I'm not talking about tonight. So we want to save Sibley Prairie, and you can help. The people who were going to sell this property were convinced by the Southeast Michigan Land Conservancy to put the sale on hold for 1 year to see if we can raise enough money to buy this land to be conserved in perpetuity. So everybody who's sitting here saying, it stinks, they're going to sell that wetland, you can literally help. We have a year and a half to raise $6 million. So take out your phones, you can get that, but you can also help bats too. There's a lot of different ways. The end of October is Bat Week, so you can go to batweek.org and find out all kinds of ways that you can help bats in your own backyard. So I'm gonna shut up.
There's not time for Q&A, but guess what? We're about to take a 10-minute break, and I bet if you had a burning bat question, you could come and Kim might talk to you personally. And the other thing I'm going to do is go back a couple slides so that QR code's up there if you missed scanning it. But we'll see you back here in 10 minutes for another Nerd Nite talk, and see you in 10.
Alrighty, everybody. Let's make our way back to our seats. We're about to get started with our next speaker. Wow, everybody, looking out into the crowd, I cannot believe how many people are here this evening. How about a round of applause for getting off our butts and coming out in public? It can be kind of mortifying, but it's good to see you all here. My name is Jacob. I am so excited to be here with you all tonight. I am here to introduce our next speaker. Without further ado, here's some information for us. Chu-Wen Zhang is a first-year PhD student studying at the Department of Epidemiology at U of M. She has been doing research about social isolation and loneliness for over a year and will continue her passion in her PhD journey. When she is not poring over data, you might find her running, swing dancing, and exploring ways to forge more social connections in everyday life. Let's give a nice big welcome to Chu-Wen. And I got this for you too.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Let's check this. Okay. Hi, I'm Colin, and I'm a first-year PhD in epidemiology. And today, let's talk about loneliness. So, let's start with think about your last social event. Did you enjoy it? Or you were secretly thinking, I wish I stay at home? Let's look at the next question. How often do you participate in social activities such as religious event, volunteering, club, group meetings? Was that several times a week? Several times a month? Once a month? Or several times a year? Think about it in your head. Okay, so this question is one of the questions from a scale we use to measure social isolation and loneliness. So what is that and why we measure it? So let's start by understanding what is social connections. So social connections is an umbrella term that's to understand how people relate and interact with each other. And social action is basic human needs, just like we need water, we need rest, we need energy and food. So we need social connections. And when those needs aren't met, we feel thirsty, we feel sleepy, and feel hungry. So when our need on social connection are met, we feel isolated and lonely. So you might say, well, it's still pretty abstract. Is there anything more tangible? Yes. So in some ways, you can understand social connection is something very similar to food. First, we have diversity. More diverse type of food you have, better nutrition. And similarly, more type of relationship, better social connections. And secondly, it's about quality. So a food with bad quality harm your health, we all know it. And also bad relationship also harm your health. And thirdly, it's about quantity. We need certain amount of food to meet our energy and nutrition demand. And similarly, we need certain size of social network and certain frequency of contact with each other to get enough social connections. And lastly, is a build-up effect. So that means negative effect shows in long term. If you had a busy day and you miss a meal, that's okay. But you miss a meal, like constantly miss a meal for months, that you might have a stomach ache. And similarly, if you just move to a new city and you feel lonely, you don't have friends, that's okay. But if you say, I don't have friends for months, that's my cursed harm. So in this era of internet and social media all over the place, are we still lonely? If you pick up your phone now, you might say notifications that, oh, your friend Abby just posted something on Instagram. And then look at the numbers. On 2012, on average, people have 229 Facebook friends. So in this level, all of us are well socially connected. However, if I ask how many of among all those 200 something friends, how many of them you contact with every other month? For me, the number is like, so yes, unfortunately, the reality is we are lonelier than ever. And even we have some countries has drawn the national attentions to establish some institute to address the issue of loneliness, such as Japan, Australia, and United Kingdom. And in 2023, the US Surgeon General also announced that we are in the epidemic of loneliness and isolation. But you might say, well, that's just bad feelings. Why should I care? Well, you should care because we have more and more evidence showing that lacking social connections in a long time harms your health in many ways, such as your heart, your cognitive health, your function health, and mental health. And its harm is comparable to smoking and obesity. so it do worth your attention. And also, unfortunately, in this society, we have this stigma around social isolation and loneliness. We feel we feel shame to share that, oh, I actually want to talk to someone, and we feel like, oh, maybe it's my own fault to put myself in a certain type of situation. And the dangerous thing about the stigma is that it can activate a downward spiral that make lonely people even more lonelier. Let's use my own story to illustrate how that downward spiral goes. So let's back to 2020 when I was in China. Okay, I took this picture. I took these two pictures when I just started my master program at but it's in 2020, we all know, so everything's online. I was in China. And if you can see the time here is my class time. So my class schedule is that I have classes from Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. And then I living alone, study alone, and exercise alone. So I was a very independent lady at that time. Okay, we're back, good. So after a while, I start to feel things off because I feel like I got tired very frequently and I had a hard time getting focused. However, so when you look back, I'm so isolated, I was so isolated, it's pretty natural that I feel lonely, right? But at that time, I actually feel shame because think about it, it was me that decided I want to go to an online course, and it is also me that decided I want to live it by myself. And I mean, I have like 30-something classmates, although I barely know their name. And then also it's pandemic, it's 2020, and I didn't got COVID, so I feel like I should feel lucky. So I stay in silence. I live with my loneliness. And after a couple weeks, I start to feel like, I must be the only one who feel this. And for some reasons, I feel like all the cohort other than me know each other pretty well, which is not true. And then after a few weeks, I feel this social anxiety. And I keep feeling that, I keep asking why my friends took 6 hours to reply my message. Although I forgot that I sent a message at 3 a.m. And then I feel like maybe she just don't like me. And I start to get mad because I didn't do anything wrong, right? And I said no to her when she invited me for dinner and weekend. So I end up stay in my apartment, lock myself with my assignment, have another lonely week. Okay. So that's how you might see why I say there is the stigma around loneliness and social isolation can activate this downward spiral. Luckily, that's not the end of story. I feel off, and then after my first semester, I deferred for a year and moved to China. With my friend, moved to Shanghai, another city, with my friends. So this is a happy me with my friends under the sun. And also, this is how I got interested in the topic of social isolation and loneliness. So now we have seen many publications talk about, social isolation and loneliness have on health in this part of health, that part of health, across age, across gender, across the world. However, we haven't really figured out why this is the case, why the social isolation and loneliness had such a huge impact on health. So I brought this topic to my doctoral training. I haven't figured out. And in terms of method, I would do data analysis using big data sets. And basically, you can understand I bury myself in the data. And you might see me struggling with coding somewhere in the coffee shop in the central campus in the next couple years. And when I say big data set, I want to use this data set is called the Health and Retirement Study. I use this because this holds in our university in Ann Arbor, and it has many participants, like more than 20,000 participants, and they have followed them many, many years, since 1992. And then this data set is a national representative data set, meaning that the result from using this data set can be generalized to understand what is it like in the United States. Okay. And in terms of impact, if we really figure this out, then maybe we can developing better intervention for social isolation and loneliness. And even we can use social connection as an intervention to promote health. I mean, think about it. We can feel the social connections regardless of gender, age, race, ethnicity. So it's pretty powerful. But then you might say, well, you might have a couple years later to figure this out. I feel lonely today. What I can do tomorrow? Yes, there's something you can do tomorrow. I will introduce 3 steps. One is to be curious about your loneliness and isolations. You can ask yourself, when do you feel lonely? Is that because you just moved to a new city? Is that because your friends moved to another city? And how long you have been feel this way? And when you feel lonely, how does your body feel? And the second step is to make something. What types of creative activities can we think of? Anyone have an answer? Writing? Yeah. What else? Yes, journaling, good. Actually, there's many more. You can do painting, taking photos, making pottery, all of them are creative activities. And the third step is that have conversation about your art. How did you feel when creating those things? And what were you thinking as you're creating? Is that someone special? Is there particular experiences? Or you just expressing how you're feeling now? You know what? Tomorrow is too far away. Let's do something now. Let's try color breathing. So now, think about how you feel right now and translate that feeling to a color. I want to ask, when we think about blue, how many people feel calm? Give me a hand. Okay. And when I say blue, how many of you actually feel stressed and sad? Yeah, I see a couple of hands. Yeah, so is that interesting? We have one color, and people can have very different feelings about color. And next steps is that we think about one color we feel relaxed and peaceful, and the other color we feel stressed and anxious. And now let's try breathing the relaxed and peaceful color, and breathe out the stress and anxious color. How do you feel? Better? Thank you. That's good. So let's bring this back to home. So in summary, I want to try to convince you that we are all social animals. We all need social connections, just like we need food. And long-term social isolation and loneliness harm health in multiple ways. And we have this kind of stigma around social isolation and loneliness. And that's why we need to talk about it, because the best way to reduce the stigma is like we talk about it. And my research aims to understand the why questions. And lastly, arts can always help, however you define it. Lastly, I want to acknowledge my research group. And this is a social event we have in Zingerman Especially thank my professor, Brianna Mazik, and also the Relate programs that helped me develop this talk and send me here. And the last minutes, there's some resources. The 3 steps I introduced are from this book, Project on Lonely, and welcome to check out their website. They have many activities that about art. And also welcome to contact me if you have many other questions and if you want me to bring this talk to somewhere else. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, that's so the question is, have I found this using social media increase social loneliness or decrease loneliness? Yeah, that's a very interesting question because for someone, like the loneliest people in this world is college students. And for some of them, using social media made them feel more lonelier. But social media can have really positive effect on making connections because if some older adults or people really hard to find someone understand them, if they can connect someone on social media, that's give them a lot of like connectedness. Yeah, so that really depends. Ooh, you go first. Yeah. So the question is, do I have any thought on getting better quality of relationships? I think that's very personal answer. I don't do research on this. My feeling is that really take it matter your quality of relationships and really like take time to nurture your relationship. I think all the good things, like if you take enough time and you nurture it, like you build your garden, right? You take enough time and then beautiful flowers grow up. Yes. Yes, the question is, do I do any arts? Yes, I do. I actually try to join painting with my partner like every weekend on like random topic. It's a new one, but yeah.
We got time for one more question.
Let me see if I understand it correctly. The question sounds like the data set I'm talking about, is there any particular variable? Oh, what information available about social isolation and loneliness there that I can use? Yes, so that data set asks a lot of questions about psychosocial variables. So we have like, we ask question like, how many types of relationship do you have? And what's the frequency do you contact with certain type of like your friends? And also we ask what's the frequency you attend like a club or volunteering. And also we ask like, how often do you feel lonely? And we ask how often do you feel like you have people you can talk to? So both objective and subjective variables are in the data set.
How about another round of applause for Colin? Alrighty, how about another 10-minute break? That means, let me look at my old clock here. Let me actually, 1 second here. It is 8 on the dot. Let's come back at 8:10. Make sure to buy some drinks, buy some food. Make sure we're tipping. And we'll see you again in 10 minutes.
Howdy. Hey, folks, it's almost time to get back here. And I really hope this person is actually still here, but to get us back on track for our third segment, when we were coming in this earlier today, somebody mentioned that they think of this as going to Nerd Church. Please stand up and be recognized for that amazing description. Now, that being said, we are the Ann Arbor District Library, and being a city-sponsored institution, we do believe in the separation of church and state. But it is ever so fitting that Jim Ottaviani is going to talk about the apocalypse, the end of the world. So please, open your scriptures to the book of Sagan, chapter 9, verse 3. Actually, he's going to talk about why we're probably not going to die from asteroids. Jim is a lot of different things: nuclear engineer, planetary, everything space guy, NASA solar system ambassador. And hopefully we're not going to die, and we're not going to have a lot of social anxiety about dying, but if we do die from an asteroid, it will be probably pretty sudden. In any case, for the benediction, Jim Ottaviani.
I have no idea how to continue on now. One thing to know, I am not actually here in my capacity as solar system ambassador. All of a sudden, I got the message today that because of the government shutdown, I'm not actually joking, we're supposed to downplay NASA connection and just talk as private citizens. So I hope you don't mind me as a private citizen, even closer to my mouth. Okay. I also hope you don't mind if I'm a little bit more notes reliant than Kim and Cullen are. I'm chicken about talking extemporaneously. But I'll try to avoid using the notes as much as possible. And we'll start with, like I said, don't look at this part right now. I'll start with talking about the title of the slide, how asteroids probably will not ruin your day. And we'll start with one of the first, maybe the first near-Earth object found. This is Eros. It was found in 1898, ironically 75 years before the publication of, anybody? Chicken Little. Why do you care about Chicken Little or Henny Penny if you grew up in Europe? Well, even if you don't know the story particularly well, you probably know about the idea that people running around waving their hands over their heads and saying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. That's the cliche for someone who's worried about the end of the world, but really probably shouldn't be. But that said, there is stuff falling from the sky all the time. So we do kind of sort of want to worry about it, and sometimes it's big, and if you'll excuse the dad joke, if it's big enough, it will have an impact on Earth. Yeah, boo. So it's good to be concerned about this stuff, really, but I'm here to tell you that most of the time you don't have to. And in the spirit of one of my favorite programs on NPR, on the media, I'm going to offer you, towards the end of the talk, the Breaking News Consumer's Handbook on Asteroids. But to provide some context, let's talk about some of the greatest hits impacts of the last 4.5 billion years. And we'll start with the first of my three favorites, Thea. And this is a favorite not only of me, but of all Wiccans and werewolves, because this is the thing that got us the moon. The idea behind this is astronomers believe that a Mars-sized object slammed into the just forming Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, spit off a chunk that looks very moon-like. It's actually kind of little red because it was hot at the time. And that is how we ended up with that giant, beautiful, glowing rock in the sky that you'll see when you come out of Live tonight. My second favorite would be the Pilbara impact. And this happened in East Pilbara in Western Australia about 3.5 billion years ago. And why do we care about this? Well, life as we know it is kind of reliant on schnapps. Not the sticky beverage that underage drinkers prefer, but CHNOPS, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. And it turns out that asteroids have a lot of this stuff in it. More than enough that when they smash into Earth, like say in Australia, they leave traces of that stuff behind, and eventually you get amino acids out of it. Not only do you get amino acids, but you get environments that are useful. A lot of calories delivered, not a lot of other nutrients that we would recognize, but like I said, you get habitats. You get clay, you get hydrothermal areas, and this is the one that I really have to read off this because I was telling this to my wife just minutes ago, and I can't say it without reading it. Lithophytic habitats, which are habitats associated with rocks. So scientists recently discovered this impact crater and noticed all these things were developed by the Pilbara impact. And interestingly enough, Pilbara happened right at the end of this long period of asteroid activity, meteorite impacts that started with Theia about 4.5 billion years ago, ended with Pilbara, and right about at Pilbara time, life starts to appear on Earth. Very interesting. Not really a theory yet, but a pretty good hypothesis. Now, the last impact that I'm going to focus on is KT up in the Yucatan Peninsula. People are probably familiar with thinking about the history of the Earth in terms of one calendar year. And if we do that, Theia happened right around New Year's Day, Pilbara, late March, and KT was kind of a sort of a late Christmas present, December 26th. And this is the big one. This is the one that paved the way for, well, little furry animals and big hairless mammals like us. It's the one that turned the dinosaurs' temperature way down and our prospects way up. I'm not sure how I feel about this, frankly, because the 7-year-old in me wouldn't mind running into a stegosaurus every now and then. And most dinosaurs, most birds kind of have that Chicken Little vibe to me. So I'm not that keen on it. But on the other hand, we probably wouldn't coexist particularly well with dinosaurs most of the time. So all in all, KT impact, big win for humanity. So now let's move on to today. So let's jump all the way to, well, I guess this would be late at night, December 31st of that year, where we are right now. And to kind of sort of reflecting on the KT impact, this is one of my favorite quotes from the head of the Planetary Society, Bill Nye, the science guy. And he's talking about, obviously, what dinosaurs did or didn't have. And one of the other things that we're pretty sure dinosaurs did not have is a functioning space program overseen by a functioning government. This is why it's good that I'm not here in my official capacity, right? But I digress. We do actually have an occasionally functioning government. And as a result of that, we have some very interesting laws on the book. And we'll start with this one. And again, I'm going to have to read it. This is Title 51, National and Commercial Space Programs, Subtitle 7, Access to Space. And let me summarize. Congress has decided that big, fast rocks coming from the sky would be bad. And that maybe we should do something about it. And they even set a timeline for this. December 30th, 2020, to discover all night. So, you know, you win some, you lose some when you're dealing with the federal government. But we are actually working on this. Here's another part of that code. And let me summarize this bit too. We should have a planetary defense coordination office. And surprise, surprise, we actually do have this thing. It's got a really cool patch too, complete with beautiful fancy Latin motto, "Here to save the day," which I think is pretty awesome. So we are actually working on both of these things, both as a nation and as a world as a whole. So where does that bring us? That brings us back to outer space and the missions. So what are we actually doing to save the day? Well, we've had a couple observatories up out there, WISE and NEOWISE, and here again I'm going to refer to my notes. NEOWISE stands for the Near Earth Object Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, which started out as WISE, and again, checking these so I get this right. One of my first experiences with a talk like this, I noticed that somebody had a lot of their facts wrong. So that's why I'm really paranoid about getting these dates and things right. So you'll see me checking this. It started out with WISE, which detected roughly 160,000 minor bodies from December 2009 to February 2011. And then NASA repurposed WISE into NEOWISE, Near Earth Object WISE, from December 2013 through just last year, July 2024, where they made nearly 1.6 million measurements of over 40,000 solar system objects, including about 1,600 near-Earth objects and almost 300 comets. And these projects were headed up by a really cool scientist named Amy Meisner. She started with WISE and then turned into NEOWISE, and then upon deorbiting NEOWISE in November of 2024, basically turning it into an asteroid, but one that would burn up in our atmosphere, so no harm, no foul. She's now working on a new project that's called the NEO Surveyor, and that's going to launch sometime in 2027, we hope, funding allowed, funding pending. Be up there for about 5 years, and the plan is to identify at least 2/3, not quite that 90% by law, but at least 2/3 of the near-Earth objects out there. So that's a lot of asteroids. That's a lot of objects that we still have to discover and still want to see. But we really care about the really big stuff, the stuff that's going to hit us. So what are we going to do about that? Well, what we're not going to do is something like this, which is to send up a bunch of abnormally attractive people pretending to be blue-collar workers on a space rocket full of nuclear bombs and create, I guess, a lot of radioactive fallout, because that's what you would do if you tried to nuke this stuff. It's going to be more like something called DART, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test. And we did this in 2022. Are people familiar with DART? Some people are, but some people aren't, which is good news for me because this will be news for you. The double asteroid redirection test launched in 2021, and on September 26, 2022, it crashed into an asteroid. Here again, I need to make sure I pronounce this right. A little moonlet called Dimorphos, just 500 feet across, which orbited a larger one, about 600 feet across, called Didymos. And we crashed it on purpose. And here is DART's own personal GoPro as it heads towards Didymos and Dimorphos. These two things, as you'll see as we get closer and closer, were basically rubble piles. So what we've got in effect is a tiny little cue ball smashing into a whole bunch of pool balls, kind of spinning and rotating in space in 3D until it hits, boop, there we go. And that was the impact, and long story short, it worked. DART was able to nudge Dimorphos off just enough to change its trajectory, so if it had been headed towards Earth, it probably wouldn't at this point. Pretty cool. Your tax dollars at work. Or actually, for those people in the front row, they can see this, your half a cent of a tax dollar of every one of your tax dollars at work, because that's what NASA gets, about a half a penny. Pretty good deal. So what next? Well, actually, this is still talking a little bit about history. When we had what some people considered a little bit of a scare, when the very cleverly named 2024 YR4 asteroid was discovered, kinda, sorta, on its way towards Earth. And so you heard about this in the news maybe, and then you waited a little bit, and like, oh my God, it's actually like coming towards Earth. And then, if you kept up with the news and kept following it, you got even more excited or worried, depending on how you feel about mass extinction, because the probability seemed to go up that it was going to hit Earth. And then, boom, all of a sudden, nothing's happening. Don't worry about it. Move on. So why does that happen? Why do we get so close and then get worried, more and more worried, and then forget it? Don't these NASA people know what they're doing? Well, it's mostly about simple geometry. And you're going to have to pretend that what you're seeing here is actually in 3D. Slide technology, it does not permit us to do cones and spheres and stuff easily. So what I'm going to show you is a 2D explanation of kind of sort of why this happens. So we start with 2024 YR4, big asteroid. Initially you saw that it was going, we don't know where, but then we kind of sort of know it's heading generally towards Earth. That's your first headline. Get a little bit more information, and you say, well, as far as we can tell, Earth is conceivably somewhere in its path. But notice how big this slice of pie, pizza, I haven't had dinner yet. I'm going to call it pizza because I don't want to spoil it with like cherry pie. How big this slice of pizza is and how small Earth is in that cone or triangle. That's where we are during those first headlines. We get a little bit more information. We narrow that cone, and Earth is a little closer, but even though it's starting to like creep outside of the cone, it is effectively bigger inside this piece of pie than it used to be, and this is where you get the, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God headlines. It's because geometry plus probability, everybody hates both, are kind of messing with you. And then we learn even more, and more than 9 times out of 10, we expect it's just going to go this way. We're no longer in the cone, and you can be more worried about Taylor Swift's new album. So, oops. With that, here is, in fact, your breaking news consumer's handbook, Asteroid Edition. We're going to start with, they are inevitable. We're going to see asteroids all the time. They aren't all bad, unless you're on the wrong end of a mass extinction event, I guess. We can find them, and we're getting better at it. NASA's on it. We can do something about them if we have to. NASA's on that too. Kind of got to fund them. And the first headline will always be scary, but like I said, that's just geometry and probability messing with your day. And it messes with you more, but then there usually isn't a third headline. Unless you come to Nerd Nite. Because this truly is breaking news. Just last month, there was a paper release saying YR 2024 YR4 has a 4% chance of hitting the moon. So if you're a Wiccan or a werewolf, watch the skies in 2032. It might be a very interesting year. And that's it. Yeah, hi.
Can you mention something about Vera Rubin finding 2,000 asteroids in 10 hours?
Yeah, the Vera Rubin telescope, I think that just saw first light, quote unquote, this year, or was it late last year? But yeah, that's another great way, a great observatory that is, I don't know that it's that the Vera Rubin is specifically aimed towards finding asteroids. You may know better than me, but it's doing a great job.
It does a big slice of the sky continuously.
Yeah.
It looks for change.
Right.
Asteroids, of course, are moving.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, 2,000 of them in 10 hours.
Yeah. So he was pointing out that the Vera Rubin telescope, which I think is up in the Atacama Desert in Chile, is that right? Is doing fabulous work finding many, many more asteroids. Not necessarily tracking them, that'll be a different thing, but discovering them. I think you were next.
So how close or how much time do we have to know that we're in or outside of the cone?
The question is, how much time do we have to know when we're in or outside of the cone? I don't know the answer to that. The idea is to see it pretty early on. As we talked about with DART, there was a many-month time delay between us sending something out and hitting it. So you want months and months, if not years. It'll depend on the asteroid's speed and direction, right? But I do have a few stats here. As of early last month, we have found now almost 40,000 near-Earth objects, 873 that are bigger than a kilometer in diameter. Those would be a very bad day for us. And about 11,000 that are greater than about 140 meters. And those would be a very bad day for like a city. So the thought is there's maybe only 50 or so more remaining that are greater than a kilometer. But yeah, 14,000 more that are city killers. So you're going to want to find them soon. And as we talked about with that time frame for DART, you need months and months and months.
All right, thank you again, and another round of applause for Jim Ottaviani. And as always, we thank you for coming to Nerd Nite. We'll see you back here Thursday, November 13th for more nerdiness. And as your final benediction, go out into the world in nerdiness. They do have an event coming up at 9 o'clock, so we do ask that if you have the ability to do so and want to help us out, run a chair upstairs and we'll help put them away. But again, thank you again for coming. Thank you to our 3 speakers, and we'll see you back here in a month. Thank you for coming again to Nerd Nite on behalf of the Ann Arbor District Library.